Hello, happy Friday. So I know the Penguins don't play for these next couple of days, but that doesn't mean there isn't stuff to talk about when it comes for this team. First segment, we're going to have a full game preview for the matchup against the Devils on Sunday afternoon, Super Bowl Sunday, of course, and go into their underlying numbers a bit more, look at their lines, see where they're headed for the rest of the season. We're also going to do I think, a nightmare playoff matchup versus actual good playoff matchups for the Penguins since they're basically all but locked in, I would say, at this point. And then we're also going to get to maybe some Olympic hockey, touch on, I think, some of the men's and women's tournament. As you know, the women's team has been playing really well as of late. So we'll get to all that starting right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Friday evening, afternoon/evening edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Of course, the Penguins got that big win on Thursday night against Ottawa, a 2-0 shutout of the Senators. Casey DeSmith continues to play his butt off, especially these last couple starts. I believe he has stopped 50. I saw a stat today. I believe 52 of the last 54 shots that he has faced. So he's just he has been on one right now, to say the least. Some Penguins updates before we get into the full preview against the Devils. Evgeni Malkin was back at practice day, practicing in his normal second line center spot. Mike Sullivan said that he is a game time decision, though. With this practice day and then tomorrow is a practice day before the team goes to Newark. Excuse me. There is no doubt that he is playing. So big news there. He only had to miss 2 games. He did not have a big stint with COVID-19. Thank God for that. He was one of the last players to get COVID on the team. But again, luckily his symptoms were not too terrible. With that news, they also sent down Valtteri Pustin and Michael Chaput back to Wilkes-Barre, so neither player got to play in their first NHL action this year. I would have liked, I think, to see Pustin at least a little bit, just because I think he would probably offer maybe a little bit more than what Dom Simone does. But I do think his time is eventually going to be coming. Probably next season, depending on what they do over the offseason. But, it's cool that, he still got to come up here. And I just, get a little taste of, I guess, some NHL. Well, I shouldn't say get some taste of NHL action because he didn't play, but, still get to be around the big league club and just see what happens on a day-to-day basis. Maybe that'll be a little bit important to him. But those are the main updates from practice today. So again, Malkin's back. A couple players sent down to Wilkes-Barre. Drew O'Connor was back on the ice. He looks like a game time decision as well. With where the roster's right now, I think he would maybe play over Radim Zohorna, but I'm not really sure what Sully will do there. Honestly, either one, you can't go wrong. I think Zohorna has played really well in his limited stint this year. Expected goals for above 60%, possession-wise for shot attempts above 55, 56%. And these are only, it's been a little below 100 minutes at 5v5 play, but he's definitely making a case to stay on this roster for perhaps the rest of the season. We'll have to see what the Penguins do if they send him down to Wilkes-Barre, which they might do, I think, just because when healthy, this team is very crowded at forward. But remember, this player is on a one-way deal next season. So, he's going to have a big opportunity, I think, to make the team coming out of camp next year. Of course, there's my Slack, but, that's not going to happen anymore. And I'm just going to mute the Discord as well, and we are good. Okay, perfect. I always forget to mute those every time I start my podcast, but, anyways, that's good. That will not interfere for the next 15 to 20 minutes or anything like that. But again, back to what I was saying, he will have definitely, I think, a big opportunity for himself to make the team out of camp for next season. Getting now to a full preview of the Devils. So they've played, I always love going to natural stats, which is just look at the team stats. So almost 2,400 minutes at 5v5 this year. The Devils have 51% of the shot attempts. So not terrible. Scoring chance-wise, well, if I can find the actual goals for, goals allowed, they're basically almost minus 30 in that category. 43.4% of the actual goals at 5v5. 51.2% expected goals for. That's not too bad. They haven't been getting good goaltending this year. They have 51.8% of the scoring chances for. So it's they're not. They have some okay underlying numbers. It's just you look at the talent that they have, and they're not there yet. And again, it also doesn't help that their goalies, as of right now, Nico Dawes and John Gillies. Bernier's been banged up a lot this year. Mackenzie Blackwood's been banged up a lot as well. As of right now, I don't think either one is going to be playing on Sunday against the Penguins. But so obviously that's going to be a big opportunity for Pittsburgh to win their third straight game. But again, New Jersey always likes to play the Penguins like it is their Super Bowl. Top line: Jesper Bratt with Nico Hischier and Yegor Sarangovich. Hischier I've always respected in this league just because I wouldn't say he's a dominant two-way force, but he's a pretty good two-way center. I think his offense is definitely underrated, but where he shines is his defense. I think it's not going to be long before he starts to get a lot of Selke love. I'm not sitting here and saying the guy is going to be the next Patrice Bergeron because he's not. But he's still, I think, a pretty underrated player in the league. And the Devils are not the same player when he's out. Remember last year, when the Devils, they were treading water a little bit. Jack Hughes was playing well, but it was the Hischier injury that really screwed them up. He was banged up a little bit this year. He's been able to come back. He's been pretty good. Obviously the big injury right now for New Jersey is no Jack Hughes. Does not look like he's going to play on Sunday either. I mean, that's a massive loss because I expected big things from him this year. He got that massive contract from the Devils because they see him as the franchise moving forward, and I do think he is going to get to that superstar level. He's not there yet. That's okay. He's entering those peak years, age 23, 24, 25, 26. That's, 27 to 28. That's when you kind of start to exit your peak years. You're still in your prime, but it's those peak years that, you want to take advantage of, if you're a good and contending team. Obviously, New Jersey right now, they're not good and they're not contending, but they're going to have to get this right with him if he's going to, stay for the long haul. Again, I know he is signed for a long time, but what's going to happen if the team continues to stink year after year? I mean, is he going to want out? Who knows? Second line: Pavel Zacha, who has been getting some trade interest according to Elliot Friedman, Jimmy Vesey, Tomas Tatar. I spoke a lot about Tatar during the offseason, that I would have loved if the Penguins would have signed him and maybe moved some salary out. Tatar has actually played pretty decently for New Jersey this year. If I can pull up his hockey reference page real quick. I mean, 9 goals, 18 points, 45 games. I mean, it's the Devils, though. I really think if you put him on an actual contending team, he probably would have 15 to 20 goals by now. It was weird that Montreal decided never to play him down the stretch last year. I will never understand that. And in the playoffs, especially because, the talent is there. It's just, I think at times he is a little bit inconsistent, but he's on the second line. Jimmy Vesey, he's burned the Penguins once this year. Remember with that shorthanded goal in the first meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Janssen on the third line with Boquist and Mercer, and then McLeod on the fourth line with Bastian. And then defensively, Jonas Siegenthaler, former Washington Capital, Damon Severson. I've always found him to be super underrated. His underlying numbers are usually not bad. PK Subban with Ty Smith on the second pairing. I love Ty Smith. He's really much blossoming into a top 4 defenseman. I think he's going to be a top pairing defenseman at the end of the day. He really impressed me last season. And, from the limited glimpses that I've seen from New Jersey this year, he's impressed me as well, especially against the Penguins. Ryan Graves on the third pairing. Remember he came over from Colorado in that trade, and I think they only gave up a pick or two or something like that. But, this is still a matchup that the Penguins should win. This is the third out of the four meetings. They'll play New Jersey one more time at PPG Paints Arena later on down the line. But, this is also, a place, Newark, that is, where the Penguins have struggled. Again, as I said in my Thursday episode, is it the House of Horrors? No, but very rarely do they play there. They still win there at times, more often than they do in Boston. But even when they do win, they don't play super well. Even in the game, the one that they won in Newark right before that Christmas break pause, I believe that was a 3-1 win. over the Devils. They didn't really look that good. They took advantage of the chances that they got, and they were able to bury them. And Tristan was able to have a pretty good game for that one. Or was that? Or actually, that might have been DeSmith that started. I think I can actually double check that here real quick to see who did start that game. Yeah, in the next matchup. So remember, it'll be February 24th against them. That will be in Pittsburgh. And again, I can go scroll back up here to see. So no, 3-2 matchup, excuse me. And it was Tristan only faced 19 shots in that matchup. 17 saves, and the goal scorers for that one for Pittsburgh: Teddy Bluger, Dayton Heinen, and Mike Matheson. So Penguins will go try to take 2 out of 3 from New Jersey for this one. 1:30 start time. You can see the game on ESPN Plus, AT&T Sports Network if you're in Pittsburgh. I don't think that's on NHL Network at all. Now, that wraps up this first segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up the second segment, we're going to get into the nightmare playoff matchups for the Penguins in the first round compared to the matchups that I think would be best for them. Before we do that, though, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions. But no, not this year. I'm sticking to my resolutions to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you are missing out on one of the best Built Bars out there. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with those. They are better. You can go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You will be blown away with what you see. Most of them contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. The flavors, of course, mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. You can go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So in terms of the nightmare matchups versus the actual good matchups, so we look at the Metropolitan Division right now. Just going to pull up the standings for you all right here. So Penguins are currently second place. They have one more game played than the Rangers. It's fine. 66 points, 21, 11, and 8. The playoffs started today. They would have home ice against the Rangers. This will be their first playoff matchup in 6 years. Thankfully, we've gotten a break. They are only 1 point behind Carolina, though the Hurricanes also have 3 games in hand on them. The Penguins do play Carolina coming up. They play them 3 times, actually, in their final 30-plus games. Those matchups are going to be huge to determine who wins the Metropolitan Division. Now, the Penguins are also 5 points up on the Capitals. Capitals also have a game in hand on them. It's looking like, as of right now, the Penguins are going to play one of those 3 teams in the first round. If they somehow collapse down to the 8th spot, it'll probably be the Atlantic winner, and that's one of Florida or Tampa Bay. Those would be the biggest nightmare matchups, at least for me. Tampa Bay is very good. I know they might be a little gassed going into the playoffs, but they've also played less hockey than the Penguins had to, and they were going for their 3-peat. Remember, Tampa Bay had that break. Last year was a shortened season. They have not played nearly as much as the Penguins have had going into their cup run. So, there is a real chance that they will do a 3-peat here, but I still don't like that matchup as of right now just because of how deep Tampa is. I think Pittsburgh would give them a heck of a fight. And if Tristan Jarry, plays up to par with Andrei Vasilevsky, they definitely have a chance. But in terms of a first-round matchup, I would pass on that, at least, for me. Staying with Florida, I hope those 2 teams play in the Atlantic Division so they can beat each other up and only one of those teams moves on to the conference final. The Panthers are just – they're deep, they're fast, they're getting great goaltending. They have superstar players that can take over a game in an instant. That's not a team that I would want to face in the first round. They're going to have Ekblad back healthy for the playoffs this time. Remember last year when he got hurt right before the playoffs, and that screwed them. I know a lot of people were looking forward to that series, me especially, because it was the first Battle of Florida series, I think, in their history. But without Ekblad there, I don't think the Panthers had a shot. And, you saw that they lost in 6 games. Spencer Knight had to start. Chris Drieger had to start. Bobrovsky played a little bit, but, he wasn't that good. But with how he's playing this year, there's an opportunity, I think, that he could potentially steal that series if he plays well. Now, in terms, I think another nightmare matchup in the first round, Carolina. I don't want to see that team in the first round. I just think that's a bad match. It's just a bad matchup waiting to happen. I would want to see that matchup in the second round. I know the Penguins can beat them, and I do want to see those two teams go at it because we haven't seen a playoff series in 13 years between the two. Jordan Stahl revenge series, Rod Brindamore versus Mike Sullivan. They also have superstars that can take over a game in an instant. Their fan base down there is crazy. Defensively, they're one of the best teams in hockey. They're just a fun team to watch. I know a lot of people don't like them for their storm surge stuff. And, obviously Tony DeAngelo's a stain. I will never root for that guy, but they're still a fun team to watch. And, just they're such a skilled and fast team. And I think, in the second round, that would be a great matchup. In terms of the first round, definitely not. Now, in terms of the best possible matchups, I actually think I would take Washington above all the other teams. And I'll tell you why. I know the Penguins have lost 2 out of 3 to Washington this year. That may scare some people, but I also will say this. The Penguins also beat them 6 out of 8 times last year. Right now, Washington's goaltending is not that good. Their underlying numbers are pretty piss poor. Their power play going into not last week, but the week before was 5 for their last 58. They have some of the worst special teams in the league. And again, if they don't improve their goaltending by the deadline, they're not going to go anywhere. And I also don't think they're that deep. Even if you bring Anthony Mantha back and TJ Oshie, and they are both expected back this season, you look at that lineup and, outside of their top 6, no one really else scares you. I mean, Lars Eller, he's okay. Daniel Sprong, Carl Hagelin, Garnett Hathaway, Nick Dowd. Compared to the Penguins, Jeff Carter, Teddy Bluger, Danton Heinen, Evan Rodriguez, Zach Aston, Reese, Brock McGinn. To me, it's not close in my opinion. John Carlson, since the new year, he only has 2 points. Tom Wilson, since the new year, he only has 1 goal and 3 points. Some of their players are nowhere to be found right now that are making a lot of the big bucks. And, I think outside of Alex Ovechkin having a ridiculous season for Washington, Nicholas Backstrom has also picked it up a little bit as well. Kuznetsov's not been bad. No, it's definitely they're not the team that they're not a team that scares me. I don't think so. I would definitely take that, at least Penguins wise. After that, I think it would be the Rangers. The Rangers also have some of the worst underlying numbers in hockey. Expected goals, they're bottom 5. Corsi, shot attempts per 60, they're bottom 5. High danger chances, they're not very good there. They're very much a, one and done kind of team in the offensive zone. They really can't put together 3 to 4 straight passes in the zone and actually cycle. Their bread and butter is A, Igor Shesterkin standing on his head, and B, their power play just lighting you up with all of their elite talent on there. I know Chris Kreider has been really good this year. It's kind of came out of nowhere, but he's doing a lot of this damage on the power play. I know how good Artemi Panarin is. I know how good Adam Fox is, Mika Zibanejad. Outside of that team I don't really think has anything. Lafreniere, I think, has been, I wouldn't say a bust, but he's not been that good. Capo Caco has been definitely, I think, a bust. Their bottom 6 is not good. Lindgren and, Keandre Miller aren't bad. But again, outside of those players that I mentioned, and of course the goalie, I think they're definitely an overrated team, and I don't see that team going on a cup run. I think the Penguins would be able to take them in a series. Now, could Igor Shesterkin go full Ilya Sorokin and stand on his head? Absolutely. It would not be surprised if he did. He's been by far and away the best goaltender in hockey this year. It's so funny because Henrik Lundqvist retires. It's like, oh, wow, what are they going to do in goalie? They have another basically mini Henrik Lundqvist, except this guy's Russian, comes in and plays exactly like him. And the style of hockey that they play, they make Shesterkin be another Lundqvist and stand on his head night after night after night. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch those two teams play this year. I'm going to have my eye just on if the Penguins can outplay them pretty badly in those games. The Penguins play the Rangers coming up in a few weeks. for the first time. But that'll do it for this second segment of the podcast. Coming up in the third one, we're going to go into just, some Olympic talk and just, my overall thoughts on the men's and women's hockey. But before we get to that, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam from both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, and right to your Olympic coverage and information. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So in terms of the Olympic hockey stuff, it is still upsetting that, we don't have NHL players there. I remember the last time I got to watch Olympic hockey, junior year of high school, got to watch the Canada-USA semifinal match during English class. I believe it was around 1:00 because they were playing in Sochi, and I was just kind of pacing around back and forth just because it was so crazy. I mean, the U.S. was playing well, but they couldn't solve Canada. That was the year that, of course, that Canada won gold. But since then, they didn't go in 2018 because the league is stupid. Obviously, this year with COVID-19, and I haven't tuned into the men's stuff. I mean, it's not fun, I think, to watch. I mean, I know the Olympics is supposed to be, for amateurs and stuff like that. And though a lot of these people that are in the other sports are actual professionals, which is perfect. But, there are people out there, especially for hockey, that don't want NHL players to go because they want the young and up and coming players to get a shot. And I mean, to me, that's a bad take because I love watching NHL players, play for their country because, this means so much to them. And you could definitely tell that, when the announcement came that they were pulling out of the Olympics, it was met with so much negativity because they were promised it. They're expected to go in 2026. They're expected to have a World Cup of Hockey maybe for 2024. I think we've been just dying for more world-class international hockey because there's so much talent in the NHL right now, and I want to see these guys on the biggest stage. That's for sure. So the men's one, I haven't really tuned in. I don't really care as much because, just a lot of players on the Team USA, I don't really know. Now for the women's team, I mean, that's actually been a lot of fun to watch. I know a lot of people don't watch women's hockey and, that's their right. But, I mean, those players are some of the most skilled players I've ever seen just watching the sport in my life. I mean, I was watching the U.S. Czech Republic game last night. That was the first time the Czech Republic women's team has ever been in the Olympics. They were playing them in the quarterfinal. And just watching the U.S. take them to town, even though the game was uncomfortably close, was just crazy. I mean, this Czech Republic goaltender, Peslarova or something like that, I think that was her name, was just going full Patrick Waugh. Standing on her head, just making save after save after save, just giving her team a shot. And, they took a 1-0 lead and it was like, okay, is the U.S. going to get eliminated here? Thankfully not. Hillary Knight was able to make it 1-1 before the U.S. broke the seal in the third period, scored 3 goals. They're going on to the semifinals to play the winner of Finland, Japan. That U.S.-Canada matchup the other night, that was just a treat to watch. And, I can't wait to watch what likely will be the gold medal match between the U.S. and Canada. And, I saw this weird take that people said that that women's hockey shouldn't be in the Olympics. I don't listen to crap like that because, it's so much fun to watch, these women go at it on the national stage. And for those people that think, well, it's a 2-horse race, look what the Czech Republic was doing through 40 minutes last night. It was tied 1-1, and they were 1 period away from probably the biggest upset in women's Olympic hockey history. So the fact that people are saying like, well, it's just it's just the U.S. and Canada dumping on teams, that's not necessarily the case because the U.S. actually had to fight for that win. I know, the shot attempts paint a different story and the shots on goal paint the same story. I get that. They badly outplayed them. But, the Czechs were in that game until the very end. They had about 4 or 5 power plays as well. And it was just a fun game overall to watch. And I'm looking forward to watching more of that, as the tournament concludes in the near future. I would want I would recommend, if you can stay up to watch the semifinal game, but more so the gold medal game, that's just going to have so much skill involved between Canada and the U.S. So I just wanted, to send that message for the final segment for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening to today's show. I always appreciate it. Remember, Penguins in action, 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. They're back, and after that, they play Philadelphia at home on Tuesday. Sidney Crosby goes for his 500th against the Devils. I'm hoping he doesn't score that, but the Penguins still win, and then he's able to do it against Philadelphia, a team that he has owned his entire career. But again, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Remember, follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes and the show's Twitter at @low_penguins, and I'll be back with another episode on Monday.